On Friday evening, I came home and found my wife, whom I had been married to for 21 years, sitting at the dining table with a glass of wine and a stack of papers. "Jack, we need to talk," my wife Jessie said. "Can I change first, Jessie?" "Of course, Jack." While I was changing, I thought back on our life together. 9 months after our honeymoon, we had twin boys, and 2 years later, our daughter Julie was born. We weren't rich, but we lived comfortably. Last month, when the kids left home, we were able to afford a nice vacation. I made sure my suit fit perfectly, put on my pants, and got ready to go downstairs. It was time to button my fly and weather the storm. As I sat down at the table, Jessie said, "Jack, I want a divorce." "Why, Jessie, have you found someone else?" "Oh, God, no. But we've grown apart. We're more like roommates than husband and wife. We haven't slept in the same bed in years." "You know you snore, Jessie, and we slept in the same bed when we were on a cruise last month." There was anger in her eyes as she said, "Jack, please let me finish. Don't interrupt me. This is going to be very difficult for both of us." "Go on, Jessie." "First, let me tell you what a wonderful husband you've been. What a wonderful father and provider. You anticipate our needs around the house. You wash the towels, you buy the milk, you clean the bathroom, or mop the kitchen floor. My coworkers would kill for a husband like you." "I'm alone all the time, Jack. Maybe we watch TV together twice a week, but usually we're buried in our phones. Once a week, we might rent a movie online. On weekends, you go on your little backpacking trips. When you're home, you spend most of your time in your office watching porn or working. Yes, I know you watch porn. At first, I was glad about that because I stopped feeling guilty when I turned you down. But now you don't even try." Note to self. How many times do you have to hear "not today" before you say "screw it"? I tried 3 times during the cruise, but all I heard was "not today." Jessie was on the attack. I don't take her out to dinner, I don't buy her flowers, and a whole bunch of other things I don't do. Jessie moved on to the summary. "Since I'm living alone anyway, I might as well make it official. I asked my lawyer to draw up a separation agreement. Have your lawyer look at it. I tried to be very fair. You can keep your retirement savings. I don't want any support. I had the house appraised and would like to buy you out." The indictment was over. "Jessie, are you sure you haven't found someone else, or that someone is waiting for their chance?" "God, no, Jack. Another man is the last thing I need." "And you think divorce is the only way out? We don't have a chance to go to a counselor and work through these issues?" "It's too late for that, Jack." "Okay, Jessie, I'll think about it and give you my answer in the morning." "Sleep on it, Jack, but you really don't have a choice." I lay in bed, but I couldn't sleep. Jessie had pointed out all the negative aspects of our life. Was our marriage perfect? Number. In the end, Jessie had made her decision, and I couldn't change it. I booked a hotel room for a week, packed my clothes and hiking gear into my SUV, looked in my closet, and took out my suits and shoes. On my way out, I signed the divorce papers and left my ring on the table. An hour later, I received a text message from Jessie that said, "Thank you." That was the final blow. I had hoped she would change her mind or regret it when she saw my signature on the papers. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, our daughter Julie called. "It sounds like Mom took all her anger out on you last night. I'm so sorry, Dad. I tried to talk her out of it, but she had already made up her mind and come up with reasons for her decision. Are you okay?" "Well, I think I've been through worse. I feel sorry for your mom. She's so focused on the negative aspects of her life that she can't see the big picture, a classic symptom of someone suffering from depression. By the end of the morning, she'll be even more depressed. I called my brothers this morning and told them what Mom was doing. I've never seen them so angry. They're calling her now to disown her. I would do the same, but someone has to be there for her. Why do I have to be the only daughter?" "You're lucky. I need to finish unpacking and figure out what to do next. I love you, Julie." I love you too, Dad, and don't hesitate to call me or my brothers if you need anything. After setting up my laptop, I closed our joint credit cards. I had my own, which I used for work. When the banks opened, I transferred half the money to a new account and removed my name from our joint bank accounts. Judging by experience, this seems to be the first thing people do when they're expecting a breakup or divorce. I couldn't remember what I had signed. Both boys called me on Sunday, cursing their mother and inviting me to dinner. I politely declined. I didn't want to talk to anyone. On Monday, I went to my boss and told him that I was taking 6 weeks off starting the following Monday. He wasn't happy. He really didn't have a choice, but I explained my reasons and he agreed. I also made an appointment with Human Resources to discuss retirement options. I was fully vested in the old system and, having worked for over 30 years, should have been entitled to it. They were going to calculate my pension, and I would make a decision. During that week, I found a nice, furnished apartment and moved my things there. I had always dreamed of walking the 2,200 miles of the Appalachian Trail, and a week after that Friday, I was on my way to the trailhead in Georgia. In the 5 weeks I had for the hike, I wouldn't be able to walk the entire trail, but it would still be a challenge. The hike was an amazing experience. It was mostly students and a few old folks like me. The people were great, and by the time I set up camp for the night, I was completely exhausted. I didn't think about Jesse. However, it wasn't all fun and games. One time it rained for 24 hours straight. The next day, I managed to catch a ride at an intersection and drive to town to dry my clothes. Cell service on the trail was spotty at best, so this was my first chance to check my messages. I was disappointed that there was nothing from Jesse. There were several messages from my kids wanting to know if I was alive. I assured them that I was. There was also a message from Jesse's lawyer asking when I would be ready to sign the papers. I deleted it. 5 weeks flew by, and I returned to my apartment. I spent the first day mostly doing laundry and showering. On Saturday morning, 6 weeks after that Friday, Jessie rang my doorbell. I invited her in and offered her a cup of coffee. She was wearing makeup, maybe even too much, and a simple but cute dress. We exchanged pleasantries, and then I asked, "Why are you here, Jessie?" "Jack, I made a terrible mistake. The first night after you left, I realized that even though we weren't sleeping in the same bed, you were always there. For the first time in a long time, I felt what it was like to be truly alone. Of course, I was too stubborn to call you, even after the kids called me, told me I was a damn fool and never to call them again. I had no husband, no family, but that didn't stop my stubbornness. I want you to come back, Jack. Forgive me, and come home. We can go to a therapist if you think we need to." "All that stuff you said about it being too late? How did you know I was home?" "You still have geolocation enabled on your phone, so we knew where you were. The kids tracked you on the Appalachian Trail map." "Tell me, Jessie, have you been with someone since I left?" Jessie looked down at her coffee cup. I knew the answer. So much for "no one was on my mind" and "God, no, Jack. Another man is the last thing I need." I took her coffee cup and rinsed it in the sink. Then I took her by the elbow and pulled her toward the door. "It's time for you to go, Jessie." "But Jack, it was after we broke up. I wasn't cheating on you. Don't you want to think about what I said?" "It's too late, Jessie." She collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'll call you an Uber. You're not in any condition to drive." "Are you kicking me out?" "I'm politely asking you to leave. That's how I would describe it." When the Uber was a minute away, I texted Julie that her mother needed her and she was on her way home in an Uber. "We don't call her Mom anymore. We call her Jessie when we want to be polite. I'll call you when I'm on my way." A few minutes later, Julie called me. "It looks like Jessie's attempt at reconciliation didn't go according to plan. She kept telling me that you love her and will take her back. I told her she was a fucking idiot." "She told me she was with someone else." "Well, I'm glad she told you herself, because I thought I'd have to tell you. She had the nerve to call me on Saturday morning, a week after that Friday, to tell me she'd just gotten back from a date. She started talking like she was going to tell me all the details. I told her to shut up, that she had just burned the only bridge that could have allowed you two to be together again. No. She insisted that you loved her and would always take her back. I told her she was a fucking idiot and never to call me again. Now I have to go check on her. Why don't you have a second daughter? I'm almost home. I'll call you later. The boys called and invited me to a barbecue at one of their houses on Sunday. I wanted to make up an excuse, but they said that wasn't an option. Everyone was shocked at how much weight I'd lost. I told them I always lose 5 kilos after hiking. After dinner, the conversation turned to Jessie. They wanted to know if I would take her back. I won't say never, but I can't imagine a situation where I would. Everyone sighed with relief and then started criticizing Jessie. Seeing how supportive my children were, I started crying. Can I say something? We're here because your mother focused only on the negative things in her life. You're doing the same thing to your mother. The highlight of the evening was the announcement by Steve, the older of the twins by 5 minutes, that he and his wife were expecting a baby. My first grandchild! Jessie started calling and texting me every day to talk. The calls went to voicemail. I responded with messages like, "It's too late," or "Sleep on it, Jack, but you have no choice." That's how she responded when I tried to save our marriage. Jessie added daily love letters to this. I read one in which she wrote how wonderful our relationship had been and how sorry she was that she hadn't realized it until it was too late. I highlighted the words "too late" and sent the letter back. On the rest, I simply wrote, "Return to sender." She also waited for me when I came home from work. Unfortunately, I had to work until New Year's before I could retire. In the end, I was forced to file a restraining order against her. She was forbidden to call, text, or write letters. I found some peace. Ben, my old friend, always threw a big party on the Saturday before Labor Day. We went there every year. He called me and said that Jessie wasn't invited. I was happy to join the party, as always, as far as I can remember. When I knocked on the door, Ben pulled me aside and said that Jessie was standing behind me. No one knew how she got there. "Thanks, Ben. I'll handle it." Jessie rushed over to me as soon as I entered the yard, kissed me on the cheek, and clung to my arm. She stayed by my side with a big smile on her face while the other guests greeted me. When we were alone, I grabbed her purse and dragged her toward the house. "What are you doing here, Jessie? You weren't invited, and you're violating a restraining order. Everyone knows we're divorced. You're embarrassing yourself, me and my friends." By this point, I had almost reached her car. "Go home, Jessie. If you don't leave within 5 minutes, I'll call the police. And who's going to pay your bail?" "Why won't you take me back, Jack?" "Let's see. You ambush me on a Friday night with divorce papers, knock my teeth out for treating you badly, and 6 days after I sign the papers, you sleep with some guy. The ink isn't even dry yet? There's nothing between us, Jessie. Like you said to me when I begged you to stay, you really don't have a choice, Jessie. I'm calling the police." Jessie cried as she drove away. Ben and his wife, Jill, stood next to me. Jill said, "I have a plan, Jack. I think she'll give in if she thinks you've moved on. My young friend is willing to help." Jill introduced me to Sue, a 20-year-old beauty in a tiny bikini. She spent the whole day next to me, pressing herself against me. I hadn't been around women in a long time, and my body reacted as it was supposed to, and Sue noticed. "Wait a minute," she said. "Your wife dumped one of the nicest guys on the planet." While Sue was flirting with me, Jill was taking pictures of us and posting them on social media. Sue made sure that in some of them my hand was on her butt. We were lying there when Ben's wife, Jill, knocked on the door. "I hope you're all decent except for Jack. I want to take a picture of this for my ex-wife." She took a picture of Sue with her head on my shoulder. She was clearly naked, although her private parts were covered, as were mine. Jill sent a copy to Jessie and me. If I were that kind of guy, I would have shared it with the guys in the locker room. Sue and I got up and started looking for our clothes. I didn't notice that Jill was still standing there looking at me strangely. Jill made breakfast, and we went downstairs. During the meal, I asked Jill to come clean. "Okay, Jack. I saw Jessie hitting on you, and I thought a little competition would put her in her place, so I called one of my co-workers. Unfortunately, by the time Sue arrived, Jessie had already left. We switched to taking some pictures of you and Sue, mostly in the background, and posted them on social media. Everything that happened after that is her business. And Jill, I saw you looking at his drink." "Whose drink was Jill looking at?" Ben asked as he walked into the kitchen. An awkward silence fell over the room. He kissed Jill and asked, "What rules?" "We can look as much as we want, but we can't touch, at least in most cases," Jill said, winking at me. While we were eating, my daughter called, "What the hell, Dad? Mom is yelling at me about that photo you posted. If I were a guy, I'd punch you in the face 5 times. "Julie, I don't know what photo you're talking about." "I'll send it to you." "Oh, that photo. Jill must have taken it and sent it to your mother. Jessie came over yesterday even though she wasn't invited." Julie added, "I saw the photos Jill posted on social media with you and a blonde in the background. If that doesn't push her away, nothing will. I hope you had a good time." Sue asked for my number and address before she left, and she started visiting me frequently at my apartment. I swore she would be the death of me. Another Friday rolled around, and I received a strange message from Ben. Jill got my permission. I was trying to type a coherent response when there was a knock at the door. Jill was standing there looking stunning. I had always found her very attractive, but today she was simply dazzling. "Are you going to invite me in, Jack? Or are you just going to stand there staring?" She kissed me on the lips as she walked past me into the apartment. Jill asked for a glass of wine, and I poured her one. After filling my glass, I sat down across from her. "So, Jill, what's going on?" "I assume you got the message from Ben." I nodded. Ben and I have a special relationship. We sometimes allow each other to have sex with other partners. We try to keep everything under control, and every extramarital affair must be approved by both of us. There is one condition: everything must be equal. Obviously, it's easier for a woman to find a partner. That's why Ben is spending the night with Sue. Jill started to take off her dress. "Please don't do that, Jill." She looked at me in confusion. "I can't do anything with you because you're married to Ben. Even if he knows you're here, it's just wrong. You're a beautiful woman. And if you weren't married to Ben, we'd be in my bed right now. But having sex with a married woman goes against my principles." Jill put her dress back on and stared into her glass of wine. There was a tear in one eye. "Jack, from the moment Ben proposed to me, I knew how it would end. Ben saw the passion in my eyes. I saw the passion in his eyes when he looked at Sue. You're a good man, Jack, but I'm in a difficult situation right now. The essence of our agreement is that we're all equal. Well, you can stay the night. We can watch a movie, and no one will ever know what happened or didn't happen. I think that'll work. I'll go get my bag and see if I brought anything comfortable to watch a movie in. In the end, she put on one of my sweatshirts. After the movie, I sent her to her room to sleep and settled down on the couch. I woke up to the smell of coffee when Jill set a cup on the table in front of me. While I drank my coffee, she asked me about hiking. I tried to explain how much I loved it and why, and apologized for talking so much. Will you take me hiking with you, Jack? What about Ben? Ben hates nature unless he's standing at a grill. We chatted about hiking, and Jill tried to set a date. I dodged the question. I offered to make her an omelet, and we moved the conversation to the kitchen. After we ate, I asked her how her open relationship had started. We were at a work party. There was a petite blonde who caught Jack's eye. He was practically ignoring me. A handsome guy came up to me and asked me to dance. As he led me away from our table, he said, "I can see your husband doesn't respect you. Let me take your mind off him. He was an excellent dancer and never touched me inappropriately. At the end of the third dance, he said he had to leave because his wife had only allowed him 3 dances. Our children were sick, and she couldn't come tonight. I asked, "Are you in an open marriage?" "Oh, no, God, no," he replied. But dancing with another woman while she was at home with sick children seemed wrong to him. "I also sent her videos of your husband behaving disrespectfully toward you. My wife suggested that I dance with you." Ben saw me dancing with this man. I expected him to be jealous, but instead he suggested we open up our marriage. Normally I would have refused, but this time I let him explain his plan. I still don't know why I agreed. I had sex outside of marriage 4 times and hated everyone. When I got home, I felt like a slut, and even an hour in the shower couldn't wash that feeling away. Ben was thrilled with his little adventure. Funny, you're the first person I've ever really wanted to sleep with. Jill kept asking me to go hiking with her, and I finally agreed to take her with me the following Saturday. She needed to make sure Ben was okay with it. On Saturday morning, when we met at the trailhead, it was cool. We had a 10-mile hike ahead of us, past a waterfall with a beautiful view. My fears that Jill wouldn't be able to keep up with me were dispelled when she took the lead. The hardest part was keeping my eyes on the trail and not on her butt. We spent a few minutes at the waterfall, then climbed to the top, where we had a snack and admired the view of the valley. It was places like this that made me love hiking. Jill said, "I could stay here forever." "Me too," I added. "There are places on the trail where you can look out over the valley and see nothing artificial, not even a contrail in the sky." On the way back, we stopped at the waterfall and dipped our feet in the water. "Jack, how could you leave such beauty and go back to the mess your wife made? As much as I love nature, sometimes you have to face the truth. I didn't know Jesse was cheating on me until I came back." We walked back to the cars in silence. When we said goodbye, Jill said she wanted to talk to me and suggested we stop and have dinner together. Over dinner, she said, "I filed for divorce from Ben. He blames you, and I let myself fall in love with you, which is a violation of our agreement." Things got a little heated. I insisted that it was all his idea, and I hate myself for letting someone manipulate me. He wanted to know if I hated myself after sleeping with you. I told him that you refused to participate in the agreement and considered it a violation of our promises, that you slept on the couch and I slept in your bed, that we kissed once. He wanted to know if I would withdraw the divorce papers if we canceled the agreement, and I said no. I believed he would just continue sleeping with other women behind my back. In the end, he signed the divorce papers without even reading them, packed his things, and left. I heard he moved in with Sue. I asked, "Did you do this so that after everything settles down, we can be together?" Yes and no. Of course, I hope we'll be together. But what's more important is that you showed me that there are still decent men in the world, men I would want to marry. So why continue wasting my life on Ben? I didn't want to interfere with her decision, so I didn't say anything. The first walk turned into a second, and then into walks every weekend. I fell in love with her before her divorce was final, and I knew I needed to talk to the kids, so I called a meeting at Stephen's house. After dinner, I stood up and said, "I want to tell you all that I'm in love with Jill, Ben's soon-to-be ex-wife." A series of congratulations and questions followed, mostly about whether we were going to get married. My flight was delayed by more than an hour due to what the airline called a minor technical issue. I don't like flying anyway, so this didn't exactly fill me with confidence. To be honest, the news that the plane I was about to spend more hours than I wanted flying, mostly over water, had broken down before we even got on the damn thing turned the trip into a nightmare. In any case, it was a pleasant surprise that after an extremely turbulent flight, We landed safely. With a deep sigh of relief, I stepped out of the airport building into the hot Florida afternoon and finally got into the large air-conditioned limousine that was waiting for me. Although the thought of having to return in a day or two bothered me, I had more important things to worry about at that moment. When I got out of the car at the hotel, I was very nervous again. I found myself in an unfamiliar city, in a country I had only seen in movies and on television, unfortunately mostly in crime series. Not the kind of programs that instill confidence in your safety when visiting such places, especially if, like me, you don't travel much. In any case, when I got out of the car, I was relieved to find that Paul and Della, the people who had organized the evening, recognized me immediately and came over to me. "Hi, Mike. We weren't sure you'd make it. We'll take your bag and check you into your room. Now you'd better go. She's waiting for you in the lobby," Della said. Paul nodded quickly in greeting and headed to the back of the car to get my suitcase from the driver. "Thanks, guys. Sorry to keep you waiting, but my damn plane was delayed," I said, trying to look as confident as possible as I walked through the revolving doors into the cool, air-conditioned lobby. I must admit that I didn't expect this place to be so luxurious. The hotel lobby was huge, and it seemed like there were several hundred people milling about. In reality, there were no more than 30 or 40. How the hell am I going to find a woman I've never seen before in my life in this place? Only God knows, I asked myself, when suddenly an extremely attractive woman in a little red cocktail dress, obviously designer with a matching handbag in her left hand, appeared in front of me. "Mike?" she asked with a charming smile. Yes, Holly," I stammered in response, somewhat stunned by her unexpected beauty. Given the circumstances of our meeting, Holly was not at all what I had imagined her to be. Holly smiled again, then surprised me even more by hugging me and kissing me on the cheek. Recovering from my initial shock, I gathered my courage and responded in kind. In Rome, as my father would say, "I apologize, it's probably an English thing. We don't usually hug women we don't know, at least not often." Although Holly and I had been emailing each other for several months and had spoken on the phone several times to arrange this little meeting. I really didn't know what to expect. "How was your flight?" she asked. "No, well, I can't fly anymore, Holly," I replied, and then explained, "A few years ago, I was in a very serious accident, nearly crashed. The plane was completely destroyed, but I think the local scrap metal dealers were happy. In any case, it undermined my confidence in flying. Although, if I'd known I'd be meeting such a beautiful lady and that I'd be lucky enough to spend the whole evening with her, maybe the flight wouldn't have been so bad." "Thank you. You know, they say that Englishmen aren't romantic, but that was very sweet of you to say. I'm very flattered that such a handsome gentleman would pay me such a compliment." "It's not flattery, Holly. In fact, I find you so beautiful that I can't understand how we ended up in this situation." I don't know if it was embarrassment or nervousness that made me stumble like that. Looking back, I realized that in my everyday life, I would never have approached a woman and flirted with her the way I did with Holly over the next 2 hours. Although, thinking back on what I actually said, I have to admit that most of it was complete nonsense. "My mom always said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, Mike. Maybe some people's eyes don't see what others see," Holly replied. "My father used to say that familiarity breeds contempt. Maybe that's the reason for our relationship. A change of country, a change of bed partners. And I remember another saying, 'Change is good.'" "Oh, you're depressing me, Mike." "I'm sorry, but the last few months have been very depressing for me, except for our correspondence, of course." Holly smiled. "I thought that would depress you even more." "Oh, don't doubt it. It really was at first, Holly. But then I started enjoying our little letters and conversations, and it got to the point where I was really looking forward to them. To be honest, I've been looking forward to coming here and seeing you for weeks. And I'll add that, if I had seen your photo, I would have flown to Canada a few weeks ago. It might ruin our surprise if someone recognizes you." "Holly, I looked her up and down. If I had known how beautiful you were, well, to hell with the damn surprise. I still don't understand why you chose me. I thought it would be ironic, I guess. Anyway, who could be better than Mike Crosby, 34, married to Emma? Holly said with a sad face. 10 years, no children. Rumor has it that was Emma's decision. Mike is a maintenance manager at a hospital near their home. Incidentally, he hates his job. Every Saturday morning, Mike plays golf with his friends and has a handicap of 3, and he's also a killer spin bowler, whatever that means, at the local amateur cricket club, where he practices on Tuesday evenings and plays almost every Sunday in the summer. God, you're so thorough, I exclaimed. No, not me, Mike, the people I hire. I have several photos of you in your white uniform. Holly's face took on a questioning look for a moment, probably wondering if she had pronounced the name correctly. You look very elegant in it. Maybe that's why I chose you as my secret lover for tonight. She smiled at me and winked. I think you're flattering me, Holly, I replied, smiling. But I also remember thinking, I hope she didn't confuse my cricket box with something else. Fortunately, we were interrupted by Paul and Della, a couple I had met at the hotel. The bellhop took your bag to your room, Mike. Are you ready for the big show? Paul asked. I'm ready as always. Are you, Holly? I tossed her the ball. Yeah, I think I'm ready, she replied. She seemed a little down to me, considering that this was all her idea. Listen, Holly, you don't have to do this. You know that. Once we're there, you'll realize there's no turning back. I can even go by myself if you want. Don't be silly, Mike. That defeats the whole purpose, doesn't it? Do you really think I came all the way from Montreal to miss out on all the fun? Come on, let's go. Mike, did you get anything for Paul? Della asked. Oh, damn, sorry. Yeah, here, Paul, I said, pulling a thick envelope out of my pocket and handing it to Paul. He added it to several other similar envelopes he had taken out from somewhere, then sorted them in what he thought was the right order, and shoved them all into his inside jacket pocket. As he did so, I noticed what I thought was a firearm in the holster on his shoulder. I remember thinking, a gun, God, these guys are playing for keeps. Okay, let's go, Holly said, taking my arm, but then she looked at Paul and asked, Intimate enough? I should have felt awkward, but for some reason I didn't. Come on, guys, married or not, you all know what it's like when a beautiful woman gets closer to you than she should. We all have instincts that, if given free rein, can take over in situations like this. My basic instincts were clearly taking over. Although I was still very nervous, I saw no reason to try to control them. No, a little closer, I think, don't you, Della? Paul replied. Yes, come on, guys. You two are lovers who have arranged a secret rendezvous away from your spouses, so act like it, replied Della, sounding like a movie director. Without asking permission, Holly put her left arm around my waist and wrapped her right arm around my hand. Then she pressed herself very close to me. In a normal situation, I would have considered this too close. Yes, that's it, good boy. Come on, don't forget the sweet looks, Della giggled. It's not hard, I replied, looking at Holly next to me. Hey, careful, Holly. Looks like our Mike is here, maybe hunting, Della commented. Holly didn't answer, or rather she couldn't answer, because when I looked at her, she caught me off guard again and kissed me on the lips. Sorry, Mike, she said, sensing my embarrassment. I should have asked, but I needed to make sure my lipstick was on straight. Holly, when you want to smear your lipstick, don't ask. Maybe I'll get a full-time job smearing your lipstick, I said and kissed her. Well, it's not every day you get a chance to kiss a beauty like Holly. Married or not, I'm still a man. Sorry to interrupt, guys, but are we going to do this or not? If you want, we can skip straight to the bedroom scene, Della said, laughing. Maybe later, Holly whispered, giggling, then gently pulled me by the waist toward the hotel lobby. Despite all my bravado, I realized that Holly was almost as nervous as I was, so I took her comment as nervous chatter. The entrance to the lobby was a little disappointing. It was quite crowded, but I noticed that several guys were showing more than casual interest in the stunning woman in the little red cocktail dress pressed up against me. I couldn't blame them. I was having a hard time keeping my eyes off the incredible cleavage Holly was showing off in that dress. I think I looked like a cat that had eaten a canary. It had been a long time since I had felt so proud of a woman I was accompanying. Paul and Della led the way, and we followed them to a table by the wall, which, as if by magic, became available just as we approached. The two couples sitting there moved to neighboring tables. I noticed that Della and Paul nodded to everyone in greeting, and they responded in kind. Paul insisted that they sit with their backs to the wall so they could keep an eye on anyone approaching us with obvious hostile intentions. Judging by his build, I decided that Paul could handle anyone. But judging by all the nods, I realized that he had taken precautions and secured backup. The waiter approached, and we ordered drinks. I felt uncomfortable sitting with my back to most of the room because I could only see the stage where a small orchestra was playing. I actually wanted to get a good look at everyone in the room, but that would have given us away. Our drinks arrived, and the four of us chatted about this and that, mostly about my delayed flight, at least during the band's first two songs. "Nothing's working. I think we need to up the ante," Paul finally said. "They haven't noticed us?" Holly asked. "They're too into themselves. I don't think they've said a word to anyone else since we came in. Come on, you two. Show Fred and Ginger your number," Della suggested. "And watch where you're looking." I held out my hand, and Holly took it as we both stood up. "I should warn you, Holly, I'm no Gene Kelly," I warned her. "I'm sure you'll be fine, lover," Holly replied with a smile. "Lover?" I asked. "Well, you're supposed to be a lover tonight, aren't you?" "Oh, yes, what a shame we have to play these silly games, don't you think?" "Who's playing?" Holly said, winking, wrapping her arms around my neck and pulling me closer. If only, I thought to myself. God, if the guys at the office could see me now. We arrived as the band was finishing their third song and playing a slower tune. "Oh, is that me?" Holly asked, snuggling up to me. "Sorry, but attractive women always have that effect on me," I replied, blushing slightly. I can't say we were dancing in the traditional sense of the word. We were just swaying in one spot, slowly turning around. But I have to admit, it was one of the most enjoyable dances I'd had in years. Suddenly, another couple bumped into us. "You've been spotted," whispered the guy as they did so. When I looked at him, I saw that it was one of the couples who had given us their table when we arrived. Looking around, I saw that the other couple from that group was dancing on the other side of us. "Be careful. Don't look over there. Focus on dancing with your partner. We'll take care of everything," the first guy warned me. I looked back at Holly, who smiled charmingly back at me. "Holly, you're a damn good actress," I thought to myself. "You know, I hope the balloon doesn't pop too soon. I'm enjoying this," I said to her. "I can feel it, lover," she replied with a flirtatious smile and pressed herself even closer to me. "I'm starting to think you have sadistic tendencies, Holly," I remarked with a smile. "I love teasing men, Mike. Tonight is the best I could come up with." I don't know what expression appeared on my face, but Holly laughed loudly. My only regret was that I wasn't really the man she was teasing, but I knew God would never give me that kind of luck. "Oh, don't look so glum, Mike. After all, you're in no hurry to get back to England, are you? We can always stay a few days to enjoy the Florida sun. Now that we've been spotted, let's make it look really good." The next thing I remember is Holly's head on my shoulder, biting my neck and earlobe. "Hey, easy there, girl, or I'll crash the car," I warned her. Holly just giggled and didn't stop. She even doubled down on her caresses. To my relief, the band finished playing before I lost control, and the guy who had been talking to us on the dance floor suggested we return to our table. I assumed Paul's other friends were nearby. Holly pulled me by the hand toward the table, pressing herself against me. When we got there, Paul gestured for us to sit down, but his eyes were fixed on something happening at the other end of the room. There he is. When he comes over, you can stand up and argue with him, but don't lay a hand on him, Mike. We'll take care of him. That's what we're paid for. Paul leaned forward and said, "Is she coming?" I asked. "No, I don't think she realizes it's you yet. If she even noticed you, she had her back to the dance floor. But now she's looking at him, so she'll definitely see you as soon as you stand up and turn around." "What's going on here, Holly? What are you doing here, and what the hell were you doing with that jerk? Who is he anyway?" came an angry voice from somewhere to my left. I stood up and turned toward the guy, well aware that Paul had stood up at the same time. But when I turned, I noticed something else out of the corner of my eye. Later, I realized that all the guys at the next table had suddenly acquired gold shield-shaped badges on their jacket lapels. Only later did I learn that they were local police badges, but at the time I didn't understand their significance. "Holly danced with that jerk just like you undoubtedly danced with my wife." Yes, well, at that moment it was the best I could come up with. I hadn't thought through what I would say when the conflict began. Holly, on the other hand, who had also stood up, had clearly prepared her speech well. "And he'll probably sleep with me later while you satisfy his wife in room 642. By the way, we live in 643 right across the hall, but we'll try not to be as loud as you were last night," Holly said with a smile, hugging my arm. I really didn't want Holly to do that at that moment because I thought her husband, who turned out to be much bigger than I expected, might attack me and Holly, who was holding on to me, limiting my room to maneuver. But I shouldn't have worried about him. The appearance of Everil, I think she noticed me when I stood up, was much more, exciting. To be honest, Everil appeared out of nowhere and clearly ran into me at full speed. In doing so, she knocked Holly's husband off his feet, pushing him aside. In a way, it was fortunate because it slowed Avril down a bit. Old Holly ended up on his knees in front of some poor woman before he fell to the floor. I didn't see this because I was lying on the floor looking at my very angry wife. I think hitting the floor, which happened to both of us, shook her up a bit, just like it did me. Anyway, she ended up lying on top of me, looking up at my face. "What the hell were you doing with that girl?" she asked. "We were dancing. What did it look like?" I replied, still unable to come up with a witty response. "It looks like you were trying to satisfy that girl," she snapped. "Come on, Avril. I just got here. I haven't had a chance yet. You've been sleeping with her husband for the last 2 days at least." I was pleased with myself. I had landed the first successful blow. But don't be stupid, Mike. Where did you get that nonsense?" said Avril, getting off me and sitting down. "How did you even get here? You can't fly." In fact, it was very difficult for me to move. Everywhere I looked, I saw only people's legs and feet. "I fly when I need to catch my wife with her lover," I replied. I was becoming a master of such retorts. "This is nonsense, Mike. You know I'm here on a business trip." "Evelyn, your business trip was to Houston, and we're in Florida. Neither you nor your company has any business in Miami. You had a meeting in Houston, and then you flew here with this golden egg, wherever he is." There were so many of Paul's people around that I lost sight of Holly's husband for a moment. "And you spent the last 2 nights in a horizontal tango with that bastard in room 643? 642, lover. 643 is our room." Holly's voice corrected me from somewhere. "Yes, sorry, room 642. Want to see the records, Avril?" I asked. I was taking a risk. I didn't know if Holly had any records from this trip, but I knew she had a lot of records from their previous dates. I decided that Avril wouldn't want to see them. Avril just sat on the floor and stared at me. I have to admit, it was the first time I had ever seen this woman silent. No, that's not true. I remember the first time we slept together before we were married. When I finished, she lay there silently. I always thought I'd knocked all the talkativeness out of her. Well, it couldn't have been a disappointment for her, because she came back for more the next night and ended up marrying me. Of course not. Suddenly, hands helped us to our feet, and the next thing I really realized, besides Holly wrapping her arms around my waist again, was that Paul had said, "Morgan Ardent, you've got it," and he handed Holly's rather disheveled husband an envelope. I wondered what I had missed that had so disheveled Morgan. Then Paul quickly did the same with Avril. Although our British divorce papers didn't require the same formality as American ones, I suppose I could have sent them by registered mail. Holly and I just thought it would be more solemn if everything was done officially, and at the same time as the documents were handed over to her husband. The documents were then handed to the two guys who were with Holly and Morgan, and they followed the lovers along with the rest of us. Holly took care of everything. Avery and Morgan worked for an American company, so we both sued them in the U.S. for turning a blind eye to this couple's actions. Note that their bosses, to whom the documents were handed over, were accompanied by their girlfriends. I think that damn company turned a blind eye to everything. Finally, Paul handed Morgan Ardent a lawsuit for deprivation of the right to love, which Holly's lawyers filed on my behalf in U.S. court. For many years, no one in the UK had ever succeeded in such a case. As suddenly as it all began, it all ended. I really have no idea where or when Avril disappeared. Holly said that one of her boss's henchmen took her away in tears, but I didn't see her leave. I did see two guys take Holly's husband away, though, but before they did, he gave me a look that I thought was supposed to turn me to stone. "What now?" I asked Holly. "We're dancing," she replied with a smile and dragged me back to the dance floor. The rest of the evening turned into a small party. When we returned to the table, Paul and Della introduced us to all their police friends, but didn't go into details. They all knew who we were. Della explained to me while I was dancing with her that they hoped the police badges would keep Holly's father from attacking anyone. Although, judging by the state he was in when I last saw him, I wondered if he had hit anyone while I was dancing with Avril. Some of the women at the party were also police officers, and I struck up an interesting conversation with one of them while dancing with her later. She told me that she had been wounded several years ago while breaking up a domestic dispute. "I blew his brains out," she replied when I asked what happened. "We're taught that if you have to use your weapon, you have to empty the magazine. There's no point in risking them being able to shoot again." "Where did he shoot you?" she asked. "In the chest. I had to have it reconstructed." "God, you're lucky you weren't killed," I commented, thinking that if the bullet had hit her in the chest, it would probably have been very close to her heart. "Damn, it hit my badge first and ricocheted into my chest. I don't know if that damn badge saved my life or just made things worse." "God, what did your husband say?" "Not much. He was shot in the ass a few years ago. The bullet's still in him. He got fired because of it." "I'm sure he was unhappy." "No, Paul's happy. He's a lawyer now, but he prefers private investigations." "Paul is your husband? Then who is Della?" For some reason, I decided that Della was Paul's wife. "My sister. She's also a former cat. She quit the job when she had her first child." I never got up the nerve to ask under what circumstances Paul got shot in the ass. I discovered that American police officers like to drink. This was a little unsettling, considering that they all seemed to be armed. Not that they were waving their guns around or anything. I don't know what time the party ended. I'm afraid I had a little too much to drink myself. But I remember well the disappointing conversation we overheard in the elevator. One of the hotel employees was telling a couple how lucky they were that the hotel was fully booked, but for some reason the couple in room 642 had suddenly checked out. The cleaning ladies were still in room 642 when Holly, Paul, Della, and I entered room 643. "Well, that ruined our evening," Holly said. "I was so looking forward to walking out of this suite in the morning and seeing their faces." "Maybe it's for the best. Their lawyers would have had more leverage in court," Paul remarked. "Paul, I know enough about what those two have been up to for the last 6 months to get divorced twice. Plus, I have a prenup that my father insisted on. He never thought much of Morgan." "Yes, but what about Mike? There are no prenuptial agreements in the UK." "I'm screwed either way, Paul. My lawyer thinks everything will be split 50-50. The only silver lining is that Avril makes more than I do," I told them. Yes, I think heads are going to roll at the company, and Morgan and Avril will be first on the list. My uncle is a major shareholder, and he's already on it, Holly told us. I had a hard time keeping him from rushing into anything, otherwise we would have missed all the fun today. Nothing really happened, there were no fireworks. Holly, you spent a fortune on something you could have done at home, I said, speaking my mind. Come on, Mike. The look on Morgan's face when you told him you slept with his wife was priceless. He had no idea who you were. Did I say that? No, not exactly. You're too much of a gentleman. But I said it. The look on Morgan's face when he realized he hadn't caught me, or rather, we hadn't caught them, was unforgettable. And then Everly burst in like a linebacker in American football when he's running for the ball. It was the funniest thing I've seen in a long time, Holly said, and laughed loudly. Holly, I'm not very familiar with American sports, but I thought linebackers played American football and home runs were in baseball, I remarked. Oh, we have something else in common. I've never been a sports fan either, Holly replied. I think we've all noticed that, Holly, Della commented. We chatted about nothing in particular for God knows how long, but eventually went to bed. Oh, I should mention that room 643 was a suite. I had one bedroom and Holly had the other. When we went to bed, Paul and Della were sitting in the living room. When we woke up in the morning, Della had replaced Paul's wife, Mona. I think Della had gone home to her children. Apparently, Paul was a court official. I have no idea what that means. But I understood that his word would be accepted by American courts almost as gospel. That is, he could swear that Holly and I had not slept in the same bed. The original plan was this. In the morning, when Morgan and Evil left the room, we would meet up with them again. But their escape ruined everything. Well, Mike, what are you going to do now? Holly asked at breakfast. I don't know, go home and lick my wounds, I guess, I replied. Well, the lovers have run away. Why don't you and I fly to Vegas for a couple of days before you go home? That's a good idea, Holly, but I don't really want to fly back to England, I'm sorry, but another flight to Las Vegas isn't my idea of a good time. Holly sat there, clearly thinking about something. Do you really dislike flying that much? Okay, there's another option. A close friend of mine has a house in the Bahamas. Maybe we could fly. There for a couple of days? Don't worry, we'll fly on a yacht and you won't have to risk trusting me to fly it. I needed to think about it, but not for long. After flying across the Atlantic, it would be silly to fly back to the UK, considering I had almost 2 weeks of summer vacation left. I needed to get home as soon as possible because when Everil returned, we were in for a real fight. The house was already up for sale, and I had transferred money to various accounts so she couldn't empty all our joint accounts. My lawyer had checked all the changes I had made so I would still be left with nothing, and his job was to make sure I didn't end up penniless. Yeah, why not? A nice ferry cruise should be fun. But can you just show up at your friend's place uninvited? Sure, I have a standing invitation. I don't visit them as often as I should. What about me? Oh, they'll love you more than Morgan. They never treated him with much respect, Holly replied with a smile. Did I say ferry? The taxi dropped us off at what I took to be a rather luxurious motorboat, or even a private yacht. It turned out to be some kind of charter fishing boat that could reach impressive speeds. During the trip to the Bahamas, Holly spent most of her time sunbathing on the bow in a tiny bikini. I spent most of my time on the bridge with the captain, who was supposedly showing me how to steer the boat. But in reality, I and the rest of the crew were ogling Holly's figure. Daddy, Holly said, throwing herself into the arms of the old man who met us at the dock. This is Mike. His wife Morgan played with you, Holly introduced us. Hello, son, he said, shaking my hand, then turning to Holly. I told you not to trust that little shit. But no, you always thought you knew better. Come on, Mike. Let's go inside and find you something more suitable to wear. I realized that my business suit was not considered appropriate attire for the Bahamas. Inside the house, a large cluttered structure that bore little resemblance to any home I had ever been in, I met Holly's mother, who greeted me like a long-lost son. This was awkward for my reserved English nature. However, things became a little more formal when Holly's father showed me to my room. Let's just say he made sure I knew exactly where my room was. And that was where he and his wife expected me to sleep. You know what I mean? The next 4 days were really enjoyable. When Holly and I weren't sunbathing or swimming in her father's pool, I was either fishing from the same boat that Holly, her father, and I had arrived on, or we were at one of the many cocktail parties. At a few of them, Holly danced with me, but she was a little more reserved than she had been on that first night at the hotel in Miami. On the last night before we left, Holly and I ended up at the beach and went for a walk in the moonlight. We didn't hug, but she held my hand. We talked about how upset I was about the divorce, about losing the house I had spent so many years renovating. Well, for myself and Avril, for our idea of what a home should be. Although Avril always let me do whatever I wanted with the house, she just chose the color scheme and things like that. The extension and even the kitchen and bathrooms were always my project, as was my garage, which I turned into a workshop. How I'm going to miss that workshop. "Mike, I want to apologize," Holly said suddenly. "Apologize for what, Holly?" "Well, for that first night in Miami, I was too bold." "Holly, we were both very nervous about what might happen. I think we both drank a little more than we should have and said things we shouldn't have. It helped us hide our excitement, and that's all we need to worry about." "I know, but I don't want you to think I flirt like that with everyone." "Damn it, don't be silly, girl. I understand perfectly well. I'm the one who should apologize to you. I couldn't control myself like I should have." "I noticed, big boy," she replied, giggling charmingly again. "Anyway, we're not the kind of people who give in to their base instincts like Morgan and Avril, are we?" "Of course not, Holly. We've spent almost 5 days together, and we haven't even kissed since that first night." "Why do you think that is?" "I don't know. You're a very attractive woman, and I enjoyed being your official lip balm last night. But we have to consider that, in a sense, we're both in a state of rebound. How many relationships that start under these circumstances last?" "Yes, I have to admit that they usually end up hurting everyone," Holly said quietly. "Besides, we're both still married, Holly, even if our spouses seem to be turning a blind eye." "Yes, you're right. We're above that kind of behavior, aren't we?" "Unfortunately," I replied. "Does that mean you can't smear my lipstick again before you leave?" "Holly, I told you I'd be happy to work full-time as your lipstick smearer." Well, I spent the next half hour trying to smear Holly's lipstick as thoroughly as possible. The next day, the same boat took us back to the mainland, seemingly even faster than it had brought us there. Holly drove me to the airport and saw me off on my flight back to the UK. Yes, okay. I smeared Holly's lipstick again before boarding the plane. When I finally got home, Avril was waiting for me. To my surprise, there were no fireworks. "Hi, I'm sorry, Mike, I ruined everything, didn't I?" said a very depressed Avril when I found her sitting in the kitchen. "I just don't understand why, Avril. I thought we were fine." "We were fine, Mike. I just got carried away with work. I'm sorry. Everything was spinning in my head. I really didn't mean to cheat on you or anything like that. God, Mike, I still love you." "You love him? What do you feel for him?" "Damn it, please don't ask. He flattered me and seduced me. I acted like a stupid schoolgirl." You know, with his wife?" "Evelyn," was all I could say. "Damn it, I should have known you didn't know. Now you're going to say we don't have a chance, right?" "You know me better than I know myself, Evelyn. When do you want me to move out, or are you leaving?" "If you don't bring your lovers here, Avril, we can live here until the house is sold. That will give us time to find something more or less decent to live in." "What about the divorce?" "I'm willing to change the grounds for divorce to irreconcilable differences if we can agree amicably on the financial terms. That will allow us to get divorced quickly." "Bring the papers. And show me where to sign, Mike. I've ruined everything, so I won't cause you any more trouble," Avril said in a submissive voice. That was the end of it. The divorce was finalized within a few months. The house sold fairly quickly. It had been on the market for almost 2 months when a real estate agent showed up and bought it on behalf of his client. He was a strange guy, not like a real estate agent. In any case, we never saw the buyers or learned their names. After lengthy negotiations, he even bought almost all the furniture. I moved into a furnished apartment, and Everil, having quit her job, suddenly found herself in the sights of another American company. She left England for California before the divorce was finalized. I don't know, maybe 2 months after the divorce, I got a call from the agent of the people who bought our house. "It seems my client can't figure out how the central heating works, Mr. Crosby. Could you come over tonight and explain how to set it up?" he asked. "I don't understand why they're having problems. It's a pretty standard system, but then again, that damn electronic timer is really complicated to understand. Yes, tell them I'll stop by tonight on my way home from work and try to help." "By the way, what are their names?" I asked. "Thanks, Mr. Crosby. I'll tell them to wait for you around 5:30. "Bye," he replied, and the phone went dead. Strange, I remember thinking. How did he know I'd be there at 6:30? I always came home from work at that time when I lived there, and that bastard hung up without giving me their last name. When I turned into the driveway, the garden looked almost the same as before, except for a small sign proudly announcing to everyone that the new owner of the house used the services of a local gardening company for lawn mowing and so on. There were no cars in the driveway, so I parked in my old spot. With a heavy heart, I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. It's very strange, you know, to return to a house where you used to live and ring the doorbell instead of just putting the key in the lock and walking in. "Who's there?" came a voice from behind the closed door. "Mike Crosby," I replied. "I'm here to explain how the heating system works." I heard all the locks and latches I had installed on that door slide and open. Damn, most of them were needed to lock the door when we went to bed or left the house. I never thought anyone would use them all the time. Finally, the door opened, and a young woman of about 18 with a strong Eastern European accent invited me in. "The lady of the house is waiting for you in the living room," the young woman said very precisely, almost as if she had rehearsed the phrase. Then she giggled and ran off to the kitchen. Knocking, I opened the door to the living room and entered the room. "I'm Mike Crosby. I believe you're having problems with your central heating?" I said to the woman who was standing with her back to me, looking out into the back garden. "No, the heating's fine, Mike." "I need someone to put some lipstick on for me," she said, turning to me and throwing herself into my arms. Funny how things turned out. I never spent a night alone in my apartment. Less than 2 months later, Holly and I were married. I no longer work at the hospital. Holly and I now represent her father in the UK and Europe. This man has a hand in just about everything imaginable. To be honest, I feel out of place most of the time, although I'm gradually learning everything from Holly. Although, in reality, I have nothing to do but show my face. I get the feeling that Holly's father just wants to make sure I can provide Holly with the lifestyle she's used to. In any case, I need to get my act together and figure everything out. In a few months, Holly will have to stop chasing me all over Europe. Well, you can't drag a child around the world, can you? No, I still don't fly if I can help it. To be honest, since we got married, our life has been like one long vacation. It's great to drive around in a brand new BMW. What's it called? Oh, yes. I think I've not only fallen in love with one of the most beautiful women in the world, but I've also landed a great job. Most nights when we're on the road, we stay in luxury hotels. At first, the nights seemed more tiring than the driving. Holly can be insatiable at times. God knows where Morgan found the energy to have sex with Avril. But Holly insists that I'm much better than Morgan in that department. Perhaps he never gave Holly and her needs as much attention as she deserved. I should note that sometimes I think my new wife has a really twisted sense of humor. One morning I was coming out of the bathroom and heard Holly say, "Thank you," to a photo she had hidden in one of the dresser drawers. Then she blushed when she realized I had seen her. I asked her who was in the photo, of course. Would you believe it's your ex-wife, Everil? Holly replied with a smile. Well, Mike, you have to admit that if Everil hadn't let Morgan drag her into bed, I would never have found you, right? I'll always have a soft spot for her, you know? Now you have to admit that's a different perspective. I walked over to Holly's dresser and picked up the photo. Thanks, Everil. I never could have imagined that your infidelities and affairs would ultimately lead me to such happiness, I said. Then I put the photo back in the drawer and turned my attention back to the woman who really mattered to me. It must have been almost lunchtime when we left the room and went downstairs for breakfast. God, I was exhausted. I won't bore you with the details of how I met and courted my wife, Marcy. Suffice it to say that we met in high school, fell madly in love, and got married as soon as I got a job. We've been married for 18 years and have a 17-year-old daughter, Jessica. You do the math. 2 years later, we were blessed with twin sons, Brian and Baxter. Life was good, and I had no complaints, but I was the only one. It seems Marcy had been unhappy for a long time. Today, I was fortunate enough to find out. I worked at a small manufacturing company as the sole electronic data processing manager. I had been in that position for 10 years. However, I had more ambitious plans, and every evening and almost every weekend, my best friend Elton and I worked on creating a computer server system that would provide instant communication over long distances. Although the software development seemed to be ahead of our efforts to build the hardware, Elton and I were still able to create a small, compact system that we were almost ready to present to the public. Unfortunately, we didn't work fast enough to save my marriage. Today, Marcy decided to tell me the bad news. John, it's very simple. I'm only asking for $500 a month for child support. You can keep the house, the furniture, and everything else. She had been explaining all this to me for the past 15 minutes, but of course I had heard almost nothing. I don't mean to interrupt, but $500 is a little low for 3 children. Marcy sighed in exasperation. John, it's just for Jessica, and only until she turns 18. I'm trying to be fair, and I think $500 is a reasonable amount. What about the boys? Aren't you taking them? Of course I'm taking them, but you don't have to pay child support for them because you're not their father. I'm very surprised you didn't figure that out years ago. I guess that shows how stupid I was. No, I didn't figure it out. It never even occurred to me that the boys might not be mine. Now she was telling me that not only did she want a divorce, but she had been cheating on me for at least 16 years. What else didn't I know? My mind started to wander again. She kept talking, and I tried to put all the pieces together in my head. I'm sure what she was saying was important, but I just couldn't focus. Okay. Damn it, okay. I'll agree to everything. The only thing I insist on is that Jessica be with me every weekend and all school holidays, including summer. Marcy paused for a moment. I can agree to that. If Jessica doesn't mind, I'll prepare the papers tomorrow. Will you sign them? I realized she was leaving. I hadn't noticed before, but over the past few weeks, she had gradually moved her things out. Before you go, answer a couple of questions. Who the hell is the twins' father? Who are you going to live with? And finally, why did you wait so long? Langford King is Brian and Baxter's father. We're all moving into his house. And his wife? Where will Joyce and the girls live? Joyce left and took the girls with her. After she caught Langford and me in bed, their marriage fell apart. I didn't ask for a divorce before because Langford was still married, and I had no choice. Now that he's getting divorced, divorce seems like a reasonable decision. You've been sleeping with Langford for 16 years? Yes. and I don't intend to stop. I'm sorry, John. You're a great guy, but you're mediocre in bed, and I'm afraid you'll spend the rest of your life working to support a family. Langford is rich, successful, and an excellent lover. I only have one life, and I want to enjoy it to the fullest. You couldn't give me that. I didn't know what to say. I watched her walk out the door, then opened a cold beer. She was right. I was sitting in a $300 chair drinking cheap beer. I had big plans, and that was all. I think what finally killed my feelings for her was that she compared my sexual abilities to Langford's. There's nothing you can do about that. Either you have it or you don't. I've always been satisfied, but apparently Marcy wasn't. We had known Langford and Joyce since high school. Foster King, Langford's father, had been the carpet king in our town for as long as I could remember. About 10 years ago, he retired to Florida, and his only son took over the business. Many of us regularly got together for barbecues, picnics, and other events. Marcy and Langford were always friendly to each other, but no more so than to the rest of us. Langford began to distance himself from our group as his bank account grew. In the last few years, we had seen them only 2 or 3 times. At least I had. They had 2 beautiful teenage daughters who were friends with Jessica. Speaking of Jessica, she was a bright spot in my troubled life. She was small, funny, and sweet. She always made me smile. Unlike her brothers, she was a good student and an honor student. All she wanted was to do well on her entrance exams and get into a prestigious university. I did everything I could to help her. Brian and Baxter were complete opposites. Not only were they uninterested in school, but they also didn't want to play sports. I tried several times to get them involved in my computer projects, but to no avail. Most of my interactions with them were preventive or corrective in nature. I would fix the situation, and their mother would ruin it. Now I understand why. Marcy had always been a good wife. She never refused me sex and often initiated it herself. She kept the house clean and was never demanding. She was a wonderful mother and wife whom I could be proud of. It turned out that she was also an excellent actress. I was finishing my 3rd bottle when Jessica came home from school. It wasn't clear when the boys would be back. They usually skipped dinner several times a week, and Marcy never said anything. I had long since stopped arguing about it. "Hi, Dad. What are you doing home? Where's Mom?" I struggled to get up from the chair and gathered the empty bottles. "Mom asked me to come home for lunch to tell you she wants a divorce." My words sounded a little slurred, even to me. I'm not a very good drinker. "I'm here. Sit down. I guess that explains why you're drinking in the middle of the day." Jessica took the bottles from me and carried them to the kitchen. "You didn't know, did you, Dad?" No. I watched as she took off her shoes and plopped down on the floor. "What's going to happen now?" "You and the boys are going to live with your mother in Langford King's house, the mansion on the hill. It seems like your mother always wanted to be rich." "It's not a mansion. It's just a big old house that his father built many years ago." We sat in silence for a few minutes. "Did you know that I'm not your brother's father?" "Yes. Brian and Baxter often joke about it. I think Mom told them many years ago. Every time you scold them for something, they go away and laugh somewhere." "Well, that explains a lot, doesn't it? How do you know all this?" "I've known about it for years, but I didn't want to say anything. You seemed happy, and I didn't want to rock the boat. A couple of weeks ago, Lisbeth and Carla told me they were moving to Lancaster. Their mother caught Mom and Mr. King in bed. I figured something was going to happen soon." "You could have told me." "I don't think so." There was another pause. "I'd rather stay here with you. You need help around the house." "That will never work. The court won't allow it. But I've come up with a little compromise." "How will that work?" "You can stay here every weekend and all school holidays, including summer." "I can arrange that. Why don't you take a shower while I order pizza?" While we ate, Jessica presented her separation plan. She would come to our place on Friday after school and stay until Monday morning when she had to go back to school. I thought it was the best I could hope for. We were still discussing the details when the phone rang. "John, I just wanted to let you know that the boys are here and will be staying the night. Tomorrow, while you're at work, the kids and I will move our things over here. They can skip a day of school. Jessica can spend the evening deciding what she wants to take with her and what to leave behind. I don't see any reason why we can't start our new life right now. How about you?" "No, I don't mind. I'll tell Jessica." The move went smoothly, it seemed. I was left alone in the house, and to be honest, I felt relieved. It was hard to concentrate on work because I kept trying to figure out where I had gone wrong. I kept berating myself for not knowing anything about my wife's relationship with her close friend, and it wasn't helping. Elton and his wife Beth offered me a shoulder to cry on, and I gladly accepted. The obvious solution was to drink, but I decided not to. Instead, I devoted even more time to the server project. Beth wasn't thrilled that Elton was working more than she was, and I ended up having to send him home several times. The divorce papers were filed, and Jessica started spending her weekends with me. She tried not to say anything bad about her mother, but she couldn't seem to say anything good either. She seemed a little annoyed that I was spending so much time on the server, but she didn't complain. She was busy with laundry and housework that Marcy couldn't do anymore. I didn't want to take advantage of her situation, but she seemed glad to have something to do besides studying for her exams. I always made time to have dinner with her. By the end of the spring, things were starting to look up. Jessica was accepted to the University of Oregon and got permission to study abroad in Spain for a year. She was afraid Marcy wouldn't let her go, but she needed her mother's permission. I didn't understand her concern until I found out she hadn't told her mother about getting into college or the exchange program. On my advice, Jessica asked her mother to sign the permission slip for the trip abroad, presenting it as a school trip without any further explanation. Marcy signed the document without even looking at it. The next week, we applied for a passport. My divorce was final. Langford was still fighting Joyce for his share. Joyce wanted blood. Marcy transferred all rights to the house to me, but I didn't know what to do with it yet. When Elton and I finished working on the server, Beth used her computer skills to create a beautiful presentation. We prepared a slideshow and ordered professional printing for handouts. A week later, we received a contract to supply equipment to the State Highway Commission and a hefty check. I had to quit my job to fulfill the order. Since I no longer had a family, a steady job didn't matter much. Elton, on the other hand, couldn't afford to quit. But he worked nights and weekends to get everything up and running. By this time, Beth seemed a little more supportive. We had no trouble hiring a few college students to help with the installation. Wireless technology seemed to make everything easier, and the entire system was assembled from off-the-shelf components. Within 6 weeks, we had a fully operational system. There were a few glitches, but the client was thrilled. 2 days later, the State Department of Corrections called and set up a meeting. Elton quit his job and Beth announced that she was pregnant. The second contract went much more smoothly. Several students had graduated and were happy to be hired full-time. Elton worked without me for a week while I accompanied my daughter to Barcelona. I needed a vacation, and Jessica felt better when I was around. Marcy was furious when she found out about the trip and that I had stopped sending her alimony. I could easily afford it, but I wanted to piss her off. I only had to hold out for another 5 months until Jessica turned 18. Requests were coming in faster than we could respond to them. I became the main contact person and was constantly on the road. Elton mostly took care of things at home. We had to rent a small office, which Beth quickly took over. She was glad I was spending most of my time on the road. Beth had to hire several assistants to train before the baby was born, and we also hired a lawyer. Things were going better than we could have imagined. Our lawyer advised us to register the company, but referred us to a professional firm in Philadelphia. The house felt lonely again. I could go a few days without Jessica because I always knew she would be home for the weekend. Now I spent a lot of time sending emails and making international calls. I guess being busy kept me from dwelling on my loneliness. There was no news from Marcy and the boys. I spent Christmas in Spain with my daughter. Everything was wonderful. In 4 months, Jessica was supposed to come home and then leave for Oregon to start college. When I wasn't traveling, it was easy to develop a daily routine. Every morning I had breakfast at the same cafe, sitting in the same spot. After only a few weeks, I became a regular there. When I wasn't thinking about the project, I spent a lot of time reflecting on what had gone wrong in my marriage. The more I thought about it, the more bitter I became. I needed to close that chapter and get some closure. My wife had humiliated me for 15 years. How could I just let that go? A small note on page 3 of the morning paper gave me hope. Philip Hughes was suing King Carpets for wrongful termination. It seemed that Philip had been the CEO of King Carpets for over 10 years. He had worked for Foster King until his retirement and stayed with the company. By all accounts, Foster King was an honest man who ran his business fairly. Langford was a little different. Philip refused to put up with the poor workmanship and low quality of the products Langford was promoting. When he complained, Langford fired him. It was a weak lawsuit, and he had little chance of winning. I decided I wanted to meet with Mr. Hughes. My bank account was bigger than ever. Jessica was in college, and I had already paid for her first year. Things were starting to look up. I hadn't heard from Marcy in months. She didn't know how the new business was going or even that it existed. It took me only 10 minutes to convince Philip Hughes to drop the lawsuit against Langford King. He had wanted to start his own carpet business for several years, but he had neither the money nor the support. Elton was more than willing to put in half the money. He and Beth thought it would be a good investment. Apart from King Carpets, the only competitors were 2 large home improvement stores in the area. Philip was confident that with the right customer service and prices, he could stay afloat. Elton and I both liked Hughes and let him run the business on his own, providing him with financial support. Within 6 months, Empire Carpet was operating at full capacity and began to turn a profit. During that same period, Elton and I expanded the business into a 6th state. Our server system was ideal for most government agencies with multiple offices. We didn't need to advertise. The business grew on its own, and soon we were completely swamped with work. It's hard to say whether we were extremely happy or extremely disappointed. The best part was that the monthly checks kept coming in. Brian and Baxter were arrested for selling drugs. Most of the deals took place at their school. It took our lawyer more than half a day to convince the authorities that I was no longer responsible for their actions. By the end of the day, all the paperwork had been completed, and I was released from all parental responsibilities for both of them. That evening, Marcy called and lectured me about my actions. I hung up and turned off my cell phone. In a few months, they would be 18 and responsible for their own lives. I raised them, but I never really loved those jerks. After we received 2 requests from the great state of California, Serpentine Enterprises of Palo Alto made an official offer to buy our small business. We had been in business for just over 2 years, and they offered us $60 million in cash, plus several options on company stock. We accepted the deal without hesitation. Elton agreed to stay with the company for a pittance, but he would have to move to San Francisco. Beth said she would divorce him if he didn't agree. 3 of our young engineers became millionaires overnight, not even 25 years old. I decided to retire. The realtor was just hanging the "For Sale" sign in the front yard when a van pulled up to the driveway. It was one of those custom-made vans with a special wheelchair ramp attached to the side. I watched from the porch as a pretty Latina woman got out of the driver's door and activated the ramp mechanism. It was obvious she had done this hundreds of times. Less than a minute later, a motorized cart pulled up to the curb, driven by an elderly man I immediately recognized as Foster King. The steps of the porch prevented him from coming closer, so I walked over to greet him. "Do you know who I am, young man?" I was flattered that he called me young. Perhaps it was his way of catching me off guard. "Of course. I recognized you from the TV commercial. You've aged a lot." My boldness made him smile slightly. The stern expression on his face when he approached me seemed to melt away under the influence of my obviously childish comment about his age. He shifted slightly in his wheelchair, then surprised me again. "I need a beer. Do you have any cold beer? In a bottle? Not one of those damn cans." "There's some Foster's in the fridge. Shall I get it?" "Relax. Maya will get it. Sit down. We need to talk." Maya walked around me as I sat down on the porch steps. I have to admit that the old man had caught my attention, but so had Maya. She was wearing a white blouse and black pants. The pants weren't particularly tight, but they were form-fitting enough to accentuate her beautiful figure. I wouldn't call her small, but she was well-proportioned. "Relax, man. She'll be back in a minute." Foster King noticed that I was looking at his girlfriend and took the opportunity to tease me. "Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but she's very attractive." "Then why the hell did I hire her?" "Hopefully, to seduce me." "In your dreams, young man, she's too good for you." We both laughed when Maya returned with the bottles of beer. She looked at us strangely when we suddenly fell silent. "You didn't come here to drink my beer, Mr. King. How can I help you?" Maya stood, half sitting, half standing, leaning one foot against the porch railing. He noticed that I was looking at her again and grinned. "You're causing me a lot of trouble, Mr. Terrell. A significant portion of my retirement income comes from the profits my business generates. Lately, that income has been steadily declining, and I've discovered that you may be the reason. I want to give you a chance to explain yourself before I have you killed." "Foster, behave yourself. You promised not to do anything stupid. Apologize to Mr. Terrell." Those were Maya's first words since they arrived. I expected to hear an accent, but she spoke perfect English. Damn, she's not letting me have any fun. Foster emptied the bottle in one gulp. "I'm sorry, John. I just wanted to get your attention. I promise I won't have you killed." He said the last sentence with a fake Italian accent, then smiled slightly at me. "Who were you talking to before you came over to me?" "Last night I had dinner with my son and the girl he's sleeping with. He claims that all his problems are because of you. It was hard to get any facts out of him because he kept saying that you were getting revenge on him for something. In the end, I got tired of him and left early. I didn't even get to see my granddaughters. I was hoping you could give me the facts, not fairy tales." Without letting me say a word, Maya climbed down from the railing and whispered something in Foster's ear. "Damn it!" He slammed his hand on the handle of the cart. "Now it all makes sense. Why didn't you tell me about this last night, Maya? Sometimes I wonder why I pay you." "You pay me because I'm the only one who can stand you." "Mr. Terrell, I didn't know that the woman living with my son was your ex-wife. I apologize for calling her promiscuous. To be honest, I don't understand why you're angry with my son for taking her. I think you should be grateful to him." "I take it you didn't like her." "Not particularly. She got a little angry when I asked Langford where my granddaughters were." "Joyce and the girls live with their parents in Lancaster." "You know Joyce." "Very well. I consider her a good friend. I can't say the same about your son. This is all very interesting, but I need to get down to business. Mr. King, have you spoken to Philip Hughes?" "No, why would I?" "Do you trust him? If so, don't you think he could give you more accurate answers?" Foster sat silently, lost in thought. "Can I have another beer?" "No." She didn't argue or hesitate. It seemed that Maya was responsible for his well-being, if not something more. "I'm leaving. Tomorrow I'll talk to Philip and visit my granddaughters." Foster King was a determined man. He had already started the car before Maya had time to get up. She smiled at me as she hurried to catch up with him. I hoped to see her again. Suddenly, I thought about how long it had been since I'd had sex. Maya helped Foster into the van as deftly as she had pulled him out of the house. Before closing the door, he looked at me. "Don't leave town, John Terrell. We still have business to take care of." The visit had been very instructive. After drinking another bottle of beer, I took a long, cold shower. I think Maya had caught my eye. She was probably married or had met some young hunk, but I could still dream. In the evening, my ex-wife showed up unexpectedly. "John, what are you doing? Langford said you were behind the Empire carpet debacle. I told him it was a misunderstanding, but he insists you're trying to put him out of business." "Marcy, King Carpet has been part of this town since we were kids. I don't know anything about the carpet business, so why do you think I have anything to do with it?" "Don't play dumb, John. I know you better than that. You and Elton own the building where the new store is located, and your names are on all the documents needed to open the business. Langford has friends who were able to find that out with no problem. Philip Hughes is just a front man." "You're right, of course. I could never deceive you, could I? So what are you going to do? Are you going to stop this?" "Hell no. Elton and I have put too much money into this to just walk away. If you keep your eyes open, I think things could get even worse in the next few days." "What else are you going to do? How could it get worse?" "I don't know. Actually, I might be wrong. Forget I said anything." Of course, the seed had been planted. Now she couldn't forget about it. It was obvious that my wife was disgusted with me. She walked to the door, but before she left, she turned around. "The way you treated Brian and Baxter after they were arrested was awful. You raised those boys and should have shown them a lot more compassion than you did. I expected more from you." "I'm just curious, Marcy. When did you tell the boys I wasn't their father?" "Does it matter?" "I think so. About 3 years ago, they accidentally caught Langford and me having coffee at a small cafe on Bleecker Street. An argument broke out, and it got physical. I decided it was time to tell them the truth. They took it better than I expected." "Okay, that explains a lot." I smiled broadly at my ex-wife. "By the way, I'm seeing Jessica tomorrow. Will you give her my best?" "Don't worry about it. She made it clear that she thinks I'm a failure as a wife and mother. I'll take care of my boys myself, and you can spoil your precious daughter all you want." She slammed the door behind her as she left. I spent the next week with Jessica. She took time off from school whenever she could and showed me all her favorite places within 100 miles. I wasn't surprised when she said she wanted to stay in the area after she graduated. I missed her, but I was proud that she was doing well. When I got home, I had a few surprises waiting for me. Foster King was a very busy man. I had no idea why he was confined to a motorized wheelchair, or if he really needed it. Apparently, his money and influence in the area meant a lot. Joyce King hired a new team of the best lawyers in the state in one fell swoop. By the end of the week, she was back in her old house, and Langford and Marcy were living in a motel, living out of suitcases. I had no idea where the boys were. All I knew for sure was that they had been kicked out of school and were awaiting some kind of trial or hearing. I wasn't too worried about that. Joyce had sent all of Langford and Marcy's belongings into storage. My plans to use Philip Hughes to drive King Carpet out of business were ruined. It turned out that Langford had never owned the company. Foster had left it in his name and retained control of all operations, although he hadn't used it in the last few years. Philip left several messages on my answering machine insisting that we needed to talk. I had no idea that Philip Hughes and Joyce King were friends. I didn't know how close they were, but they were close enough to trust each other. Foster King fired his son and obtained a restraining order against him, prohibiting him from approaching the company and anything related to it, including the company car. He also appointed Joyce as the new manager of the company. Since she had no real experience in the business, her only option was to turn to Philip for help. Philip was torn between his loyalty to Elton and me and his desire to help Joyce. He desperately wanted to please everyone and turned to me for advice. Elton was 3,000 miles away. My real estate agent had 2 offers on the house and was waiting for my decision. One of the buyers wanted to close within 30 days, so I agreed. Jessica had left, Elton and Beth were away, and I had no reason to stay in the area. The realtor was already putting a sold sign on the house when Marcy pulled up. She stood in the driveway and stared at the word sold for a long time before approaching the house. Is the deal closed, or do they need to get financing or loan approval? Everything's settled. They had the cash and wanted to buy the house now. I'm moving out by the end of the week, are you? Joyce King hired an expensive lawyer and was able to take the house away from Langford. We're looking for a place to stay until we find a new home. I just thought you might want to rent this one. I'm so sorry. You're late, but I'm sure with Langford's money you won't have any trouble finding a place. I smiled to myself as I said this. She didn't know I was aware of their financial difficulties. I was sure Foster King wouldn't spare his wayward son. Philip told Foster how Langford was running the business and how he treated his wife. Dad was not pleased. Marcy didn't press the issue. As she drove away, I noticed an Alamo car rental sticker on the rear bumper of her car. That evening, Philip Hughes and Joyce King came to see me. I was surprised at how well they got along. We quickly reached an agreement. Empire Carpets would become Empire Floors and would sell only tile and wood flooring. King Carpets would sell only carpets. Philip didn't foresee any problems in running both businesses, but he agreed to it only on the condition that Alton and I leave. He believed that the two businesses would complement each other. He also pointed out that in a few years, King Carpet might be interested in buying Empire. I thought that was very smart of him. I noticed that Joyce smiled when he said that. Apparently they were closer than I thought. I gave all the furniture and belongings from the house to the Salvation Army. In fact, I gave them most of my clothes as well. I needed to update my wardrobe anyway, and it was the right time. When I finished sorting through my things, everything I needed fit in my car. I spent the whole day paying bills and making sure I didn't have any outstanding debts. Somehow Foster King got my cell phone number and made me go out to dinner with him that evening. It was my last day in town. I was sure everything would go well, and I was even looking forward to seeing Maya. Foster King was a proud man and liked to brag a little. He told me briefly about his meetings with Hughes and Joyce. He had no doubt that his actions toward his son were well-deserved. He thanked me for letting Hughes help Joyce. I tried to listen to every word he said, mostly out of politeness, but my eyes kept wandering over to Maya. She was wearing a gray-green evening gown that made her eyes sparkle. Her hair and makeup were perfect. Foster noticed my distraction and paused in his speech to make me feel uncomfortable. His laughter betrayed his intentions. Maya didn't participate in the conversation, only stopping Foster when he wanted to order more drinks and not allowing him to order dessert. He pretended to be a little offended and muttered something discontented. Maya apologized and went to the ladies' room, giving Foster a chance to talk to me alone. What are your plans after you sell the house? The house is sold, and tomorrow morning I'm leaving for San Francisco to visit my friends, Elton and Beth. They had a baby girl and named her after me. They named their daughter John? Well, actually, Johnny. How could I refuse? Where will you go when you get back? No idea. I'll leave my car at the airport. All my stuff is in it. I'll probably head south until I find something interesting. I have a better idea. Stay with me. My house is too big for one person, and I don't want Maya to be alone all the time. Foster, what are you getting at? Maya's husband died in a car accident about 3 years ago. She has no friends in West Palm Beach and few opportunities to meet a suitable man. You're the only man she's shown any interest in over the past year. She told you that? No, but I've noticed how she looks at you, and she always listens intently when I talk about you. Here's what I propose. Stay with us for a month. If it doesn't work out, you can get in your car and continue your trip. You have nothing to lose, and I would really enjoy the company. The conversation ended when Maya returned to the table. She smiled at both of us as if we had just done something wrong and she had forgiven us. I decided to go to West Palm Beach. My visit to Elton and Beth went very well. The new owners had been able to expand the business to 20 states and several international locations. In a few years, the stock options would probably be worth much more than the cash we had been paid. Johnny was charming. I'm sure she'll curse her parents for giving her a boy's name, but I'll be the best godfather a child could ever hope for. As soon as I got home, I called Philip Hughes to make sure everything was okay before I left. Things were going well, and he gave me a brief update on Langford. It seemed he had a lot of personal debt that wasn't covered by company accounts or assets. The divorce and hiring a lawyer for Brian and Baxter had practically ruined him. He had no credit, no cash, and no prospects. I was happy for Marcy. 2 days later, I was in West Palm Beach. Foster King must have been richer than I thought because his beach house was magnificent. The old eccentric took every opportunity to set me up with Maya. He insisted that she show me all the restaurants in South Florida. After a while, we started pretending to go on dates, but we just stayed at the house and watched TV. Dining out every night sounds better than it was. I think he knew what we were doing, but he decided it wasn't any worse than what we were getting out of our relationship. We enjoyed the time we spent with Foster, but we enjoyed the time we spent together even more. It seemed to make him happy. Maya and I started sleeping together in the 3rd week. Foster, of course, knew about it and started teasing us mercilessly. He didn't stop until I moved into her bedroom. It seemed to make him happy. Life was good. My financial situation was incredible. I lived in a mansion by the sea with no expenses and shared a bed with a beautiful woman. My money was earning more interest than I could spend, and my stocks were rising so fast that my eyes popped out of my head. I bought myself a new car. I had always wanted a Mercedes. Joyce's divorce was finalized, and Philip Hughes wasted no time moving in with her. Marcy, however, had a change of heart. Suddenly, marrying Langford King no longer seemed like a good idea. Marcy seemed to disappear into the night. Jessica and I never heard from her again. Before the end of the year, Foster asked me to witness his new will. I never found out what was wrong with him, but he seemed to be fading quickly. He left all his property to Lisbeth and Carla to be held by their mother until they turned 25. He left his business to Joyce on the condition that she marry within a year of his death. He left the house in West Palm Beach to Maya with the same condition. Things didn't turn out the way I planned, but who am I to complain? Yes, I'm getting married sooner than I planned because I just found out that Maya is going to be a mother. If it's a girl, I won't name her Elton. Brian and Baxter decided to seek their fortune in Mexico, but things didn't go very well for them there. Marcy showed up out of nowhere and asked me to help her pay her lawyer. I gave her $10,000 and never saw her or the boys again. Jessica finished school and moved to Barcelona. I'm not sure, but I think she met a young man there. Foster lived for another 2 years. There was no autopsy, and I still don't know what happened to him. He lived long enough to become the godfather of my new daughter, Foster Ann Maria Terrell. I'll name the next one Elton.